Now in this video we're going to cover what happens if I would have invaded Hilo and continue my strikes throughout 42. And to do that I'm not going to go back and redo the whole 1941 strike and the 1942 spring strike. So we're going to start where the 42 spring strike ended. So I have to explain some things just to let you know what I would be changing. So hopefully it doesn't get too confusing. And I built and got the most planes I have there. I have 16 planes plus another light carrier that we're allowed to build in this task force. Plus, I'm going to be bringing all the other carriers that I used at the Java Sea. They'll be coming over because over here in Malaya, where I'm attacking Singapore, I don't need the carriers there anymore. But I have to continue going after Singapore in the summer of 42. Up here in India, I'll keep putting pressure here. Not sure if we're going to spend money on an offensive in this whole front or a limited offensive or an attrition. And then here in China, you see it looks pretty skimpy because, I mean, basically we're just going to have to deal with it and keep funneling some troops in there and just playing our attrition game. And so with all that being said and still continued, the only invasion I would have done in Spring 42 is took Wake Island. I would have still took that one, but we are going to stop this other invasion I wouldn't do in 41 or 42, and I'll show you, in order to carry out the Hilo invasion.
And everything else here stays the same. In the 1941 turn, I have to invade Johnston, and I have to invade it from here. So the only thing I would change in everything I did in 1941 is we would take this 1-2 that was invaded here at Leh with the 3 ships, and we would set it up right here. This would now invade Johnston. So that's doable. Americans can't do anything about it. I just don't make this invasion right there. So the start of 42. The start of 42 spring, I need 2 things to happen. One, I have to make an invasion here with at least a 1-2. And then I want to SR planes here. So where would that invasion come from? The invasion has to be 20 hexes within this. So basically what I would do, and see how I have another 1-2 that I've set up here? I just like to keep a 1-2 on truck. I wouldn't do that either. So this 1-2 and this 1-2 would be set up right here. So both of those would be set up there. In the winter, one of them invades here. Now I got a 3 ship here.
So the 3 ship that returns from the invasion of Johnston in 1941 on this island, you SR it to the other island where the 1-2 is. The Americans can't do anything about it in 41 winter. There's no submarines. Nothing can be stopped there. So you make sure you SR it.
Then I would not make the Rabaul invasion. I would take these fleets, instead of sending them over here, I would SR them out to here. I can put a 9... I can put up to 9 here. So I would take the 6, and I would put the 6 here. So I would have 9 fleets right here. You can base 9 on an island. And then in the spring of 42, we come out, we do our attack here. I think no matter what, now the Americans should come out, stop the patrol like we did, no matter what else is happening. At least we sunk a Japanese carrier. So none of that would change. What I would do is take this 9 ship and a 1-2 and invade Hilo. The rest of the ships, like I couldn't concern myself with the British here. So nothing be happening down there as far as any more shipping goes. I wouldn't be making these 2 invasions. But I would get a man on Hilo now. So that invasion takes place. And that's where I would be right now at this step. I would still invade Wake.
So it looks like we'll get all that covered. And I'll show you how it all works here in a minute. I'm just working it out for you, showing you what usually takes place compared to what we have to change here. But what we're wondering now is when we invade Hilo, since all our carriers are going to be in that patrol striking Pearl Harbor, the only thing that can stop that invasion are American submarines. So in the 1942 year start sequence, during the SW phase, the Japanese build their submarines and ASW and put fleets there, and everything's done at secret at first, so you don't know what Americans are putting up there. For our game, we're going to say they build 10. And I'm just going to tell you what I worked out, but I'm not going to show you every little thing. But for those, if those 10 subs come out to attack any naval activity, which the first one would be us invading Hilo with a 1-2. Those 10 subs, if they roll good, like a 12, they can take out, they could destroy 3-4 ships and abort 3 or 4. So you would need a 9-factor fleet to move this 1-2. And that's not even guaranteed. Then at the post-combat phase, after the invasion, we have to supply the hex, because we want to SR an airplane there. And a plane can only be SR'd to a fully supplied hex that we control. So now we're going to run supply. The supply can come from Japan or truck. But again, if the Americans choose to attack this, we're going to need another 9 ships to protect that supply. So that's our second thing we have to protect. So that would take 18 ships now. Then, once we do supply it, at the SR phase, we need to SR a 5-3 aircraft to it. Now to SR 5-3 aircraft out to Hilo, it will cost me 10 ships to move those 5-3 aircraft. And then I need to protect that from submarines if the submarines come out against that one. Now remember, the Americans can only use their submarines once for the entire year on the board against a naval activity. But you don't know which one he's going to use it on. He can pick any one, so you got to potentially protect every one. So now I need 10 ships to move that 5-3 plane. And remember, we already have 18 for the bridgehead supply and the invasion supply, so that's 28 ships. And then I need another 9 to protect the losses. So that goes out to 37 ships. Now I'm using 37 Japanese ships just to pull off the Hilo invasion. Well, there's an easier way. So I'm just explaining that to tell you there's an easier way to protect against 10 American submarines hitting you. If you put enough fleets in the SW box, you can take all your losses from those fleets in that box. In this case, since we're invading Hilo, I would say if you put 10 to 12 ships in there, I would say 12, in the SW box in the spring of 1942 in the SW phase, that is enough to protect yourself against the U.S. submarines. And you only have to keep those 12 there. And you don't have to sit there and protect every little invasion and supply protection and SR on the board. Because now, when the U.S. submarines choose to come out and do a naval activity, you only keep the minimum ships required to run your supply or do your invasion or do your SR. The minimum ships will automatically give you a submarine defense roll of a 1, because it works like the air defense roll. For every 9 fleets you have, you get 1 factor. Well, we're never going to use much more than 9 to do a lot of stuff. So you just put the minimum there and you'll get 1 defense roll, and hopefully you can abort 1 sub or sink 1 sub or a couple. Then we just cover whatever the American fleets do, and whichever activity they choose to engage in, we use the ships in the SW box. So that's how we're going to run that. So I'm just going to say 12 Japanese ships will go to the SW box. So I'm not going to mention submarines from here on out attacking naval activity, other than in a naval combat sequence when you have damaged ships. Because it's all been taken care of in the SW phase. If the Americans try to bring out their subs, then we know we got it covered. So I won't be mentioning submarines attacking any naval activity.
So yes, I can SR a Japanese 5-3 right to here. That's where that would go. Now I have a Japanese 5-3 there.
And one more thing I should mention. When you go to supply determination phase, it's done in the movement phase after air and naval missions are completed, you know, the movements of them, and then you determine supply, and then it's done at the post-combat phase. So anything that you either got back in supply that was out of supply, or you never had a chance to even supply it, then you're allowed to supply it now in the post-combat phase. You can't attempt the supply in the post-combat phase to a same unit that you tried to supply in the beginning of the turn and failed. Okay, so
in the winter of 41, everything's done the same, except we do one more invasion. The Americans can't do anything about this, right? It's 41. They can't stop nothing. So now I own that. This ship goes back to there. Now in the SR phase, this one ship will SR to this island. Now we go to spring 1942. Let me show you what we got now. So we are back to spring 42. The two American carriers.
And remember, the SW phase has already been taken care of. We've already bought our subs and put our ships up there, so I'm not going to mention that.
There was 10 ships left from the Pearl Harbor surprise attack, and then each carrier had 6 ships that came with them. So that's all back in Pearl. The start of 42, they would get magic. Remember, they had the variant, so that's even helpful. They're going to get 5. So let's see what they get. I'm missing a magic counter, so I threw in another counter in there that says year on it. So there's their 5. Let's see what we get. Well, we missed 2. We have 1. We have 1. Well, same thing as last time. I got 2 out of the 5. Wow, terrible luck. So there's the magic draw. Japanese turn. What do? We're going to send this task force right back out here. What did we decide to do with the Americans? Remember, this is a patrol. So as the patrol comes out, we've determined we're going to get in the naval battle. So let's do another naval battle, because we'll see how this one goes, because I think it kind of favored the Americans last time. The Americans, remember, they want to guarantee the intercept. So they spent a magic point. And I'm going to do it again, because we can't afford to miss this and have them just bomb us in port. So we get the -1 on there off the interception, and it's successful. So we have a battle again right there in the patrol sequence. So I'm going to put the fleets on into combat groups. Americans, we set it up the same way. Remember, we put the carriers in the 3rd combat group and just fleets in these first 2. The only thing I'm going to do different now is I don't think I need the cap, because the 2 times we've already fought this battle, the Japanese never found the location of Group 3. So we're going all on strike. So there's the Japanese setup. Remember, they're doing the same thing. And remember, they only had 2 combat groups. So let's first search each other out. The Japanese have +2 to their dice. And is the magic... Are the Americans going to put magic on it? Yes, they're going to say, we're going to -1 off your search roll. So it's only +1. And he got a 2. And a 2 on the search says failure, nothing located. That's even worse than last time. The Americans have a +3. Three plus the 2 is a 5. One enemy combat group remains hidden, and combat group 1 may attack. So this can attack. He says this remains hidden. The Japanese are going to pick that. We don't have to say it yet, but that's what they're going to pick. The Americans, they get to add 3 to this dice roll. 4. And 3 is a 7. Good visibility. The number of fast carriers in enemy combat group 1 is revealed, and all 1, 2, and 3 may attack. That's what we're looking for. Americans do it again. So it looks like that's the good setup. And they tell them, the Japanese say, yep, all the carriers are right here. So The Americans are going after that. So the difference between the search levels was a 5 to a 7, so it's a 2. The surprise level becomes a 2. Enemy cap got off guard. They don't get the +1. So let's go. Americans come after the carriers. And you have to fight the cap. Remember last time they got away with fighting. They didn't have to. But there's 3 elite, and they're going to go in and take on 3 American planes. And the Japanese get a +1. They don't get the one for cap, but they're elite aircraft. And Americans win that 3. The Japanese lose 3. They lose all 3 of their elite. And the Americans will lose 1. So 5 continue the attack. The air defense of this is going to be a 1. And you would get to add cap in on this defense, but they don't have any. They got shot down. I don't know if I said that before. I can't remember now. But anyways, air defense is 1. And they just rolled a 9. One plane shot down. So Americans lose another one. 4 go after a carrier. The carrier has a defense of 1. And he rolled a 7. And 1 is aborted. So 1 is out. 3 are attacking a Japanese carrier. Here we go on the air attack roll. Wow. 12. 2-4. 2-4 destroys a Japanese carrier. 1 Japanese carrier sunk. So far after the first American strike, this is the losses. Now the Japanese are going to strike. And they pick this naval group right here. They pick combat group 1. And there's an air defense die roll of 1. So let's roll it. Americans just rolled a 4. And that missed. Now they will attack the ships. And there's 3, 6, 9, 12. There's 13. That's a +3 for being over. And then another one for elite. So a +4 to this dice roll. And they rolled a 5 and 4 is 9 with 13 aircraft. 4, 6. So 4 are destroyed. Now you have to apply the damage. So the damage goes 1 each. And then you have an extra damage, so another one of these dies. So 6 American ships just were destroyed. And 4 ended up being damaged and go home. So after the Japanese attack, there's the losses. So, Japanese are not retreating, either are the Americans. But the Americans lost a combat group. And the Americans are not protecting their carriers, they're going to go after another carrier. Here's the search. The Japanese have 2. They get a 6. All enemy combat groups are located. 1 and 2 may attack. So, they locate them. Now they're going to pick which ones to attack. And the Americans have a modifier of 2. And they get a 4. 1 enemy combat group remains hidden. So the Japanese say this is hidden. The Americans can attack that. And they choose to. They put theirs on naval strike. The Japanese. Now here's where it gets a little tricky. The Japanese have to pick which one. Combat group 1 or combat group 2. For the sake of argument, I'm going to say they picked 1 again. Trying to think the Japanese were, or the Americans were going to trick them. And they find out, nope, there's only ships there. Little bummer. Okay. So here we go with the attacks. Air defense roll for the Japanese is a 1. Wow, that's a miss. We go in and strike. 5 airplanes hitting that. 9. 2-4. So 2 Japanese ships are sunk. And then with the damaged, 4 are sent home. So 2 are sunk. 4 are sent home. Back to truck. And that leaves 3. Americans fly home. Don't lose a plane. Japanese attack. Here's the air defense die roll of the Americans. 7. 7 shoots down a Japanese, oh sorry, wrong table. Aborts one. So one gets aborted, no big deal, it goes back. And now 9 attack that and they get a +1 because it's elite aircraft. 5 becomes a 6 with 9. And here we have a 3-4. So 3 are destroyed, 4 sent back, and 2 are remaining. That was the third and final round. Now fleet combat takes place. All the fleets in the first one attack. We have a 5 against a 2. They both roll at the same time.
So I didn't bother going through the fleet combat. We're just, we've already done this strike already, but I'm going through it just to show you what's going to happen when we keep striking every year. But these are the losses so far.
End of that fleet combat. Now, do we go another round or we retreat? Well, the Americans can't retreat. They're going to get murdered. Because this battle's going in the favor of the Japanese right now. But we did lose a combat group. So everything's in one. Everything's in one. Like that. Let's roll for the search. Here's the Japanese. +1 to the dice for one group. And he only gets a 2. And he gets nothing. Let's go to the Americans. They get a 1. Oh, bow. 6 becomes a 7. And they locate the groups. The difference of that for the surprise level is a 6. So the surprise level for the Americans is through the roof. They're attacking the carriers. They get no fleet defense die roll. They get no cap. And they pick a carrier. Obviously, the carrier will take 1 defense roll, and it's a 7. Aborts 1 American aircraft. So out of the 5, 4 are attacking the carrier. Here goes the attack. And 9. And I think he got +1 to that air attack roll. He did. So 9 becomes a 10 with 4 aircraft. And it's a 2-4. So he sinks another Japanese carrier. And now the Japanese. Air defense roll of a 1 for the Americans. 7. No, it would just be a -1. So actually the Japanese would have been -1 on their air defense roll. But like I said, can't remember everything, right? So it's an air defense roll of 7. And he has a air defense of 1. So 1 plane is aborted. He goes back. This meant he's attacking an American carrier. I'm going to split up the 9 to a 5-4. So here's 1 carrier with the 5. It's 6. The 6 misses. And the other one where 4 is attacking is an 8. And 1 aborts. So 1 of these is sent home. So now it's a 5 attacking 1 carrier and 3 attacking the other. Here we go. There's the 5 attack with the air attack. And it's a 12 for 5. That sinks an American carrier. Here we go with 3 attacking the other carrier. Remember, elite aircraft give you 1. So it's 4. So with 3 becomes a 5. Now we have a damaged American carrier. And these go home. Now we go into fleet combat again. The Japanese against the Americans. The Americans roll. Now remember, you can only pick either the benefit for the fleet or benefit for the carriers, and we did the carriers. So here's the Americans. Fleet combat, got a 7.
In regards to the American carrier being damaged, we would immediately send the submarines after it right after it got damaged. But I'll do that after.
1 sunk, 1 aborted. So 1 is sunk. 1 sunk, 1 went home, but he still gets to shoot. So he had an 8. 8 attacking Americans, and he got a 7. 1 sunk and 2 damaged. So we have a damaged carrier that has to go back. Well, remember, and he's got 1 damage point on him. And I'm going to send out subs now take care of this. I'm going to send out 5 submarines. Now he gets a sub defense roll. His defense is a 1. So let's roll his defense attack. And he rolled a 6. And that did nothing to the submarines. Submarines are going to attack. It's a fleet combat, so it's 4, 5. But the submarines do get a +1 for the Japanese. And we have a 6, which becomes a 7. And I have 5. And we have another damaged and a sunk. So it's up to 2. And since it did have 1 damage, it just received another one, because damage stays on the carrier as it goes back for submarines. So the submarines did sink this carrier. These subs are used. It can still be used in the SW phase. It can't come out and attack anymore. So the Americans have nowhere for their planes to go. So they're done. And the Japanese would have, what, 3, 6, 9, 12. 3, 6, 9, 12. Actually, Japanese will lose 1 more because it has nowhere for that plane to go. That's the end of that combat. So the Americans lost 2 carriers. The Japanese actually lost 2 in this battle. So yes, it's very, very good for the Americans to come out and intercept. And that is the end of that. And now the Japanese will continue and strike ships at Pearl. And all these planes are going to strike. The defense level of the port is 8, 9, 10. Oh, he gets 2. He just made. He gets 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. The defense level is a 7. Here we go. First we roll for surprise. Japanese got a 2 on the surprise level. There's no planes there to help. But radar, so you're a 1. And that ain't going to help us on that surprise. So, nothing's helping us there. Let's roll for the air defense of that 7. We have a 9. It's a 2, 3. So basically 2 Japanese planes with American air defense roll got shot down. And 3 got sent home. So 6, 7 continue the attack. And we're going to add 1 for elite. Wow, nice roll. 11 becomes a 12. And there's 7. 4, 6. So the Americans are destroyed because they're undamaged factor. So 4 are sunk. The other 6, that leaves 5 damaged ships.
I know I go fast through the damaged aspect of it, but basically a destroyed ship is 1 factor. 2 damaged factors equals 1 destroyed ship. So anyways, the Americans have some damaged ships now. And I don't know if I explained. All ships that return to port from being damaged in the naval combat, they are automatically not damaged anymore once I commence the airstrike. There's no more damaged ships that return from the battle. So nothing's damaged. But now, during the airstrike, anything that I've damaged, they will remain damaged in continuous airstrike rounds.
Let's go ahead and roll for the airstrike. And we have a 9. 12, so it's a +2 plus elite is 3. And we know rolled a 9, we get a 10. 5, 6 takes care of the rest of them. So we destroyed the rest of the American fleet. That's the 42 spring strike. We come out with this, as we done last time. We take that, just kind of running through it. This goes back to truck, and we continue with our invasions. So the invasion takes place. So now a bridgehead is put there. Now at the end of the combat phase, we've already explained it, you have a supply determination, and we want to run supply to that.
Now, as long as we have fleets or ASW or CVs in the SW box, a undefended sea supply line, which is what we'll be running here, automatically has a defense level, a submarine defense level of 1. So that's all we need, and we're good with these submarines, just like we've already gone over.
So we go to unit construction and SRs. Now remember, they have a 5.3 plane the Japanese can build, and they're going to build it. They need 10 factors, which I have 13, to SR this plane here to the supplied city. And now I have 5 land-based air there.
So to wrap up the Japanese spring 1942 turn, we still stayed with our conquest of the money areas. The only thing we didn't do was invade New Guinea at Lae and Rabaul. And we still invaded Wake Island. Wake Island is still important to me for the route to Japan from America in the northern area. You got to take Wake. And to keep supply from getting to Philippines or somewhere to run his submarines in the SW phase. So we did that. But now we have a 1-2 on Johnston Island, and we have a 1-2 and a 5-3 on Hilo. And now, what would be the Americans' response to this? The Americans go over their BRP level. They're going to be at 175. You add 20 to the base every turn they take. So in spring it went to 185. 10% of that is the SR level for the Americans, and you round up, so he would have 9. Half of that, rounding up, is your initial deployment, which would be 5. So you see there's 5 initial deployments you can bring in. Now these can also be hit by Japanese ships or fleets or aircraft or Japanese subs. Now any ships that the Americans have in the SW box would help defend this, and any ships coming across in the initial deployment would defend it. So the Japanese would have to destroy every American ship in order to start sinking the important stuff, carriers or something. And the 5-3 that the Japanese just SR to Hilo was constructed of allowable builds by the Japanese, so it's actually inverted, so it can't do anything about it. So the Americans are pretty safe bringing in their initial deployments. So in regards to the American fleets, 3 is the reconstruction rate, so he can build 3. And then remember from the 1941 winter airstrike, an American task force, a carrier and 6 ships were in the American box. So there's another 6 ships. So there's 9 American fleets coming in. And then as regards to the carriers, you have that 1 carrier that was there from the strike. It will come in, and then the Americans get to add a carrier in the springtime free of charge, because it was basically over in the Atlantic Ocean and it got shipped to the Pacific. So there's 2 carriers coming in also. And just to make clear, there's no allowable builds for the Americans in the spring of 1942. So all their builds have to come from eliminated units. Army air factors that were destroyed, and you can rebuild that and bring it in. So that's 4 initial deployments. And then you can rebuild destroyed naval air factors, but there's a rate on that. The Americans can only rebuild 2 in 42. And that would be your 5th. So those would be your 5 initial deployments. Now bringing those in, and again, I've already worked all this out, so I'm telling you, this is not going to cut it, especially with the Japanese land-based Army air factors there. They're just going to wipe you out again. So me as an American, I would not bring anything to Pearl Harbor. I would just initial deploy a couple men down to the South Pacific box, and then eventually get them into Australia. But that's it. Now, if we don't get something in Pearl, the Japanese may be able to invade Pearl with that Army 5-3 factor base there in Hilo and their invasions. They may get 18 factors. I don't know. I still say they can't, but they may. So just to protect myself, I would probably initially deploy the 5-3 Army Air Factor that we rebuilt, just put it in Pearl. That and the 6th Infantry there guarantee that the Japanese won't be able to invade that again. So basically, despite some role clarifications and stuff, I think we pretty much showed that a Spring 42 strike really stops the Americans from doing anything effective on their turn.
The Americans, they couldn't do anything this turn. Everything was spent. They had nothing. The Australians are weak. They can't do nothing. Even the British can't do nothing. We'd have to rearrange stuff over there. The Chinese would do their thing. Basically, you stopped the Americans from doing anything just by hitting that in Spring 42. And then I'd bring these in. So that's what would be on Pearl now. So would the Japanese bring out another patrol? Absolutely. Would they bring this and invade Midway? Absolutely. Do it.
Now at this point in the summer 42 turn, the Japanese are going to, fleet is going to be stretched very thin again. They'll be conducting invasions in the southern Pacific at Leh and Rabaul. They'll be going after Midway. I need SR duties. I need fleets protecting the carriers. And so when we use our Army-based aircrafts at Hilo to counter-air the Americans' Army-based aircraft that they moved into Pearl, I might not be able to SR my losses back to Hilo, the planes. But that's really something we have no choice, because the Americans do get, in the summer, a 5-3 allowable build Army aircraft. And if they send that to Pearl, which they will, that'll give them 10 Army air factors on Pearl, and that we cannot have. So we're forced to attack with our land-based air and counter-air the Americans' land-based air, as well as bringing out another strike. So let's start the Japanese summer 1942 movement.
I'm going to move this and go pick up, get some tanks off of Manila here. I can put them there. And I got plenty of SRs here. I'll take these. Since nothing's happening down here, I'm going to come down to this one. So those are my base changes and my patrol. We would go on with this. Attack here, this, attack Leh. Let's see. The way it would look at the Japanese summer turn. Take Rabaul. Invade Leh from there. I would move tanks into India, and then I would invade Midway. There's nothing the carriers or anything can do about here, because remember, the Americans didn't bring anything in. They take Rabaul, this, so they're advancing. I used every ship I had, and now Singapore does fall in the summer. So the British fleets are gone, and we finally have Singapore. I don't have to worry about British ships taking me out over here anymore. But basically, the rest of my Navy comes this way.
Now, I know I'm out of sequence here. I just wanted to work it out if I had enough shipping to invade Leh and Rabaul and Midway this turn, and get enough ships in my task force. And I do, so I just worked all that out, which is actually the combat phase. So let's go back to the movement phase where I have the patrol, and we're going to airstrike Pearl for the summer of 1942.
We'll strike this. Here comes the patrol. He has really nothing to intercept with one ship. He ain't going to do it. So the patrol will reach its hex, and I'm going to counter-air this in the patrol phase. So it's a 5-on-5, even-up battle. The red dice is the Japs, and the Americans beat them. The Japanese lose 3. I was afraid of a bad roll, so Japanese lost 3 aircraft, so they got 2 left. The Americans were counter-aired successfully.
So, first of all, anytime you have aircraft fighting each other that involves more than 5 factors of air, you have to have multiple air combats. For every 5 airplanes fighting each other, you roll the dice, the results taken, and then the next 5, and so on. So now with this strike coming on the port, I can do 2 things with my Army air factors 5-3. I can either be involved with the airstrike, and if I do that, my 5-3 will not attack until after the carrier airstrikes takes place. So if I let the carrier strike take place first on the port, the American 5-3 Army Air Factor turns into 15 Army Air Squadrons, plus the 2 naval they have. They have 17. They have to fight their way through that, and that's a lot of cap. So the best thing for you to do at this point is to take the Army 5-3 Japanese aircraft and counter-air what's there, and that's what you just saw. But I only counter-aired the 5-3 American Army Air Factors, and that is not correct. I have to counter-air all the air there. So when you're fighting over land and you have a mixed force of naval air factors and Army air factors, then you have to convert the Army air factors into naval air factors, because you can't break down the naval air factors any further. So those 5 Army air factors become 15. It's 1 naval air squadron per, 3 naval air squadrons per Army air factor. So there's actually 17 air factors of Americans there against 15 of the Japanese. And then you would conduct the battles in groups of 5. So you'd have 3 combat die rolls. The last group, the Americans would have 2 extra aircraft, and they would get a +2 to their dice for numerical superiority. And then the total after all the air combat, you would see who would win the air battle. The guy who lost more lost the air battle. If I can win the air battle, the Japanese, then all the American planes are inverted. If I lose the air battle, since the Americans had the bigger force, then all their surviving air factors are going to survive and then can help protect that base against the carrier strike. Now, for the game here, and I ran through it wrong, we're not going to do any of that. We're going to say the Americans barely won. A lot of losses were taken, and they only had 2 naval aircraft left to protect that air base. And that's what we're going to go with. But it's not a big deal. I mean, the air battles are going to be pretty close. They usually are. And the Japanese might even win, and the Americans wouldn't even get any cap. But we're going to go on with what we have, what we're showing you here, with the 2 naval air the Americans have to go on cap.
So now the carrier strike force will attack. Now there's 2 naval air that'll probably come up for cap or go after another carrier. But we're going to put all planes, because we've already done this before, that 2 air. So that's all they got from their carriers. And the Americans fly up cap. So let's see what kind of surprise they're getting on the base. You have the -1. We didn't do the magic for this turn. Really help a good magic draw. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Let's see what we get. Missed. Missed. Got 1. Missed. Gosh dang it. Only 2 again. Remember, I have to use the year because I can't find one. Wow. That is just not good. We're going to put 1 on their search. So -1 for search, -1 for radar. So -2 off their surprise. And it becomes a 1. That surprise doesn't matter. So we stopped them on that. So we have to fight cap. There's 2. I'm going to take on 1. Now the Japanese, they can decide to use the regular or the elite, and they're going to go with the elite. Because the Americans get +1, they get +1, so it's a even roll. And the Americans beat them again. Shoot 1 down, and the Americans lose none, so it stays there. So we strike. This many is coming in. The cap shot. Now the air defense will shoot. The air defense of the port now is 1 for the fleet. 1 for the objective is 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So it's defense of 6. Here we go, air defense. We got a 7. 2 shot down, 1 aborted. So 1 goes back to the task force, and 2 shot down. So we get 1 back. Say it doesn't look as impressive as it did before, but it doesn't take much. Here's what I got to hit. Let's take 3 on the fleet. Let's take 3 on that, and then the rest we want to hit. Well, we're going to hit the base. All these are together. Let's put all these on the base and only 3 on the ship. I might need 4 on the ship. Let's do that. Here you attack these units separately. So I'm going to put 4 on them. You break these down into air squadrons, naval air squadrons. So 4 turns into a 12. So there's actually 12 here. And I think that's good. You may want to do this. That's how we're attacking this. So let's strike this. And 3 plus 1 for elite. 5 becomes a 6. And we sunk it. Americans lose another ship. That one's done. We got 3 attacking the land base portion, plus 1 because elite. 7 becomes an 8. And we have 1 destroyed, 3 damaged. So 1 destroyed, and then the 3 damage will eliminate that. So they lose another air. That one's done. Now this is 12. Let's see what we get. We have 3, 4, we have a 5, and there's more elite, so we're using elite. 3. And we rolled a 3, which becomes a 4. So it's 1, 3. And there's 12. He destroyed 1 and damaged 3. So basically 4 out of the 12 air squadrons got destroyed. So that leaves 8. You convert 8 back into Army air factors. So 3 of them will go to 1 Army air factor. That leaves 5. 3 of them will go to another Army air factor. That leaves 2, yes, and you round up. So yes, 3 did survive. 1 is eliminated. So, not bad.
So that wraps up our airstrikes. I think I took 2 more to eliminate the American Army air factors at Pearl. But I don't need to show it to you. You see how it works. We just need to remember to keep our mistakes down to a minimum. The multiple aircrafts and attacking counter-airing Army and naval aircraft mixed together. But we don't do it all the time, so it's good practice. But I think the Japanese effectively stopped the Americans from doing anything in the 1942 summer turn. And we'll see what the Americans' response will be in our next video. One more video coming up. See if the Japanese can keep striking Pearl Harbor. Now remember, in the summer of 42, we haven't stopped doing anything with our money islands. I did take Leh, Rabaul, and Midway Island. So now, if I can get Port Moresby, Guadalcanal, and Colombo, I'll be pretty happy. I mean, we don't have to stop there, but that's a lot of objectives, and we'll check it out next video.